welcome once again to the HowLongToBeat podcast. As always, this is Rick speaking to you through the magic of the internet. And through the magic of the internet, I am speaking from the UK to Paula, all the way in Chile.
Hello.
And Alex from sunny, warm Canada.
So warm. Although we did have a warm week this week, actually, but it's gotten cold again.
Oh, there you go.
Which warm to me is probably cold to you, but it's fine.
Yeah, we did this whole thing last time. It's all relative, right? That's how it goes. And we've got relatively few completions this week, by which I mean only Alex has got some completions this week. But between the three of us, we've also got retirements, currently playing games. A topic, as always, this week talking about what is or isn't a modern game and where you draw that line. And a brand new round of the hit podcast game show sensation, How Long to Beat The Game. That felt quite good on my end, which I can't normally say.
It wasn't that bad.
Let's escape from this conversational dead end. Alex, what have you completed this week?
Yes. So I've completed actually a couple things. I beat the Cube Escape collection. So that one's all done. And that was a lot of fun. Like Theater in the Cave are definitely, I would say, two of the more involved of the episodes, because it's like the 9th and 10th, I think, or no, it's 8th and 9th. Yeah, that's what it is. So they're pretty involved. They're actually like a fair bit longer. They're definitely more than an hour on each of them. Getting a little more obtuse even than some of the earlier ones. Like some of the stuff, like I looked up on a guide and I was like, are you for fucking real? I was supposed to figure that out. So I was like, all right, whatever. But I finished those. I'm understanding the story more. I definitely think, like I know, Paula, you did the Rusty Lake stuff. I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think you should probably play the Cube Escape games because they're genuinely the whole story. Like it's like sure, I don't fully know what's going on, you know what I mean? But I know what's going on in a sense, right? Where I don't feel completely confused. Like I'm like, okay, I know who these characters are. I'm starting to understand a little bit more. I know who the main kind of character is. I'm understanding the concept of memories and like what we're actually going through in this and what's happening. And Samsara Room definitely fills in more of that. But I would say, I forgot to add, because I guess I'm playing another one, but I'll talk about that in playing. I think I'm going to take a break from it for a little bit, because I'm like, fucking hell, I've done a lot of Cube Escape now. I've probably played like up to 10 hours of Cube Escape at this point. So I've gone through it, and it's great. It's wonderful, but you do get to a point where you're like, all right, no, a lot of fish. Like just random.
Those puzzles definitely start to merge if you hit them back to back to back to back.
Yeah, and like they just merge in your brain a little bit, where like you think you know what you're playing, but you're like, wait a minute, didn't I already do this? To their credit, I don't think they've ever like really repeated a puzzle or anything. They've definitely repeated themes of the puzzles. That's also the nature of the story of these games, so I'm not holding that against them. Anyway, so yeah, beat the collection. It's very fun. I beat Samsara Room. It was good. Not the best of them. I know it kind of connects all. It's like the prequel, but is it really? You're like, technically it is. But with the way this game works, you'll know what I mean when I say, is it really? Because anyway, the whole series deals with time. We'll put it that way, with the past, present, and future. That's like a big, huge thematic point within it. So time is a little nebulous in these games, which is actually what makes it really fun, I think. So yeah, I still recommend them. They're cool. They're fucking. It's Twin Peaks. Shit, that's what it is. Like, I don't know, you know, but like a different world. But it's basically that. It's very Lynchian. Citizen Sleeper, I beat Citizen Sleeper. I mean, I basically 100%ed it. Actually, I think I did. Like, there's nothing else. I said I like did main plus extras because I guess technically, because I completed certain missions that like negate certain other ones, I didn't see everything. But I basically saw everything, and I even finished up to because they have 2 out of 3 episodes now, free episodes released. So I've finished the second one. So now I'll just wait for the third one to come out. Yeah, the ending just sneaks up on you because it doesn't really end, right? Like there are many endings. And so I saw kind of most of the major endings, at least. I have like 80 or 90% of the achievements on it at this point. And so like, I really like how kind of modular it is. Now, I think if there is a critique of it, it is in the fact that it doesn't end. like truly just does not end. Yes, you
So
have.
is that how the DLC works? Like, because it's open ended, when you roll credits, you can go back to your save and do
Well, rolling credits is
post game
meaningless
stuff
in
just
this
there.
game because when you roll
Okay.
credits, you just click continue and you just keep going. Now,
Oh.
if you choose something that takes you off of the eye, yeah, you end. But then if you click continue, you just start right before it happened, which is a great mechanic. I love that I don't have to go back and do all
Mm.
this. It just puts you back before you made that critical choice. But also, it kind of creates the problem of your choices are kind of meaningless. They don't matter because you're just gonna go back and do whatever anyway. So it's a double-edged sword in a lot of ways, right? Because I sort of feel like, I don't know. I guess we can talk about this more when you finish it. I guess thematically it does kind of make sense. Like, you're gonna stay on the eye, but it is a little weird. Like, you feel like, oh, you finished, but like, I guess that's just an ending that I could do. I guess I could just do this ending if I wanted. I guess I could do this one. You know what I mean? Like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't really feel like when you make a choice that like that's a big deal. You're just like, okay, well, I made that choice, and now I'm just gonna go back and do the other choice, and then I'll just keep going, and I'll see all of the possible ways that my game could end. That being said, the endings that they have created are very poignant and great, and I love the world they've made. And it's still one of my favorite games I've played in a long time. Like, it's easily a 9 out of 10 for me. The only thing keeping it personally from a 10 is the lack of a satisfying conclusion, which this DLC might potentially bring, because it is pretty interesting so far. I really do enjoy because they're really expanding the world. It actually feels like a setup for whatever they're going to. I'm sure they'll work on a sequel. I think this has been pretty successful for them. I would hope they would work on, even if it's not a sequel with your character, like, I would love to see more in the world they've made, because they're really expanding the world out, and I'm learning a lot more. It's very expansy. Like, this really feels like The Expanse, but like slightly like shifted a little. Like, even talking about the belt and stuff, like they have like, I don't know, a lot of the mechanics within this and like the world they've created. It's that very like, real future, but like the overtaking of capitalism and the just like how much it would actually suck to live in a space station. You know what I mean? Like, you're stuck in this little fucking tin box. But yeah, the characters are fantastic. Again, beautiful to look at. It's on Game Pass. Like, I mean, like, honestly, of all the Game Pass games, I'm like, you really should play this one. Like, it's just, I feel like everyone can enjoy this. There's nothing holding you back from it. It does get a bit repetitive near the end when you have to start to wait for things and you've kind of done everything, and so you just kind of are going through the days. Yeah, that can get a
That's
little.
where I'm at now. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've sort of maxed it to the point where like nothing matters. Like, I have all the perks, and so I'm never ever ever losing any of my dice anymore.
More
And
cryo than you know what to do with.
I have
You can
so
make
much cryo.
stabilizers. Yeah.
Yeah, I can make and buy multiple different areas. I can just use scrap, which really, if I just get one scrap a day, it's fine. I'm
Yeah,
infinitely
that
okay.
broke the game. Yeah.
It really does. And I don't know if it has any thematic utility. Anyway, like I said, I love the game. I think there are some things that they could have done, perhaps, to massage it a little bit more. Because literally, when I came to the end, I was like, oh my God, I'm in the late game. Like, I didn't even realize. Do you know what I mean? It just kind of happens. You're just like, oh shit, I've done a ton of stuff and I've almost got all the way through it. So anyway, really cool game. Highly recommend. Has some little thingies here and there. I'm sure we'll talk more when we get to your playing there, Rick. But yeah.
Well, I might even just sort of tag it on now. Obviously, I'm
Yeah, might
playing
as
it.
well,
It's
yeah.
relevant to the discussion. I mean, the mad thing is, I'm incredibly close to having finished it. So, literally, as we were coming onto the podcast, I was a few minutes late because I was A, not watching the clock because I was so engrossed in the game, and B, in the back of my mind I do want to try and finish this so I can just talk about the complete experience this time. It's going to have to wait till next week. That's just the reality of the situation. This was a 10 out of 10. I think the first half of this game, and we touched on this a little bit last week, perfectly encapsulates the idea of like making tough choices and trying to balance all these meters in a way that really is relevant and tied into the story. What unfortunately happens is you do sort of come to a point where Again, you have all the cryo you need. None of the meters are actually sort of putting you in any jeopardy. You're not having to like cut things or make tough choices necessarily. And I think that does undercut what the game's doing a little bit. And again, I'm still leaning on a 9 myself. It has been a wonderful game. The writing, it can't be understated just how excellent the game is written, or how excellently it is written, and how well the art complements that. The 3D sort of polygonal world is quite sparse, but that doesn't detract in any way. I think if anything, it lets more of your focus go on to the character portraits and all of the detail and the love and the care that's been put into those. The DLC chapter is an interesting one. I kind of wish I knew that it didn't need to be done in the main story, because I've gotten to the point where there's a few counters that I'm waiting for to progress things. And I actually do think I'm more or less at the end of the game. Once there's like an 8 cycle countdown that I've just initiated through a chain of side quests that I've put together. Alex is nodding in a sense that makes me think that might actually
I'm assuming
be the
it
very
involves
end of it.
the hub. Is that accurate?
It's the seed you get from the navigator.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Oh,
So,
that
yeah,
one. Oh, okay. I did that one really early on, but you could do them in any order. So
Okay. Maybe I'm somewhere different. The thing is, I've had the
you
seed
have a
in my
while left
inventory
to go with that one.
Oh, okay. So I've had that seed in my inventory for God knows how long. Maybe it just took me longer than it was supposed to get the Rico quest longer. Anyway, maybe I'm not quite as close to the end as I thought. Interesting. But I am far enough through that all of the meters have become meaningless. And like a fool, I've started the DLC bit in a window where it actually might cause me a slight problem. But bar, minor balancing issues, the game is wonderful. And I think I'll probably echo what you said, Alex, in that particularly with the barrier to entry being so low, it's on Switch, it's on Game Pass, it's on PC. It's not an expensive game. Obviously, it's like an indie title. I think it's a solo dev as well. There's no...
I think it is, yeah.
I can't think of any reason that I would tell someone not to try it. Maybe if you don't like reading or fun. It's very, very accessible, and I think it's well worth people's time to check out, including Paula.
What? Me?
Who is this Paula you speak of?
She sounds lovely.
I don't know Paula.
So Paula and I, neither of us have finished anything this week. I have got a couple of retirements, so that's probably one for us to roll across into. First of those, and some background to this one, Netflix have got loads of free Android games, some of them quite high profile. And what I'd sort of resolved to do is download and try any of them that look interesting. It's worth saying, for anyone who wants to sort of cringe along with us to 12 minutes, that is one of the games on there. But there's also there's also actually decent games, like Spiritfarer has gotten an excellent critical reception. Desta is an exclusive game. That's from the makers of Monument Valley. Heads Up, if you want a party game, Exploding Kittens, ditto. Quite a few other ones of varying sizes. The one I tried and ultimately just couldn't vibe with myself was Hextech Mayhem, a League of Legends story. So I've never played LoL. I don't really have any awareness of it. But this is a rhythm action game, like an auto runner with a music gameplay component. Looked interesting. I thought I'd give it a go. Music didn't grip me, neither did the gameplay, unfortunately. And again, I've got no investment in that IP, so there was no reason for me particularly to try and push through. That was a very quick drop. I think I played the first 4 or 5 songs. And the problem that this game has, I say problem, probably 2 big drawbacks, again, besides the lack of any sort of IP investment or anything like that. The first one is that there are only 3 inputs. There is jump, there is like a ground pound, and there is a bomb throw. the music doesn't therefore have a lot of room to breathe. You don't have a lot of expression within your inputs matching the music. Conversely, there are alternate paths, and the game's not super clear on how it wants you to approach this. So if I contrast it with something like Groove Coaster, which is a great rhythm game on mobile and arcades, and there's like a mixed bag Steam port sort of thing. It is on a single continuous path. You have nodes to press or scratch or hold or slide. When there are gaps, if you time it to the music, you can put in like scratch notes and earn extra points and find like hidden counters to hit. That works because you're on a single path. Your input's not throwing you off course. With Hextech, there are collectibles and pickups and extra things away from the inputs, but you are graded in part on your ability to hit the inputs. And so it feels like you're sort of torn between two things, and not in a way that like, oh, that's an interesting choice you've presented me with. More in a, oh, what the fuck do you want me to do sort of way.
More like you should only be hitting these if you're trying to replay the level. That's the idea, right? Like they're just
maybe, but it's just not well communicated.
Yeah,
maybe. I didn't care enough to try and dig any deeper into it. Is the bottom line. Your mileage may vary. And then the second retirement, and this is a very soft retirement, is Jelly Car Worlds. The reason I've parked this one, while I was having quite a lot of fun, is that of the 8 levels, or the 8 worlds, 2 of them are marked as coming soon. So what I decided to do is I enjoyed the first 3 worlds, had a great nostalgia trip with it. There's lots of other things I'd like to come back to on Switch, so I've parked it. I'm going to check it again maybe in the summer, and hopefully those extra levels will have been added at that point. But none of that is to discourage anyone who sounds, or anyone to whom that sounds interesting, from checking it out, because it is really good. For me, particularly, it's been a lovely nostalgia trip, but even if you never had any experience with these games originally, it's a really fun, novel sort of platforming concept. There's nothing quite like it, and there's a lot of physics-based fun in there. I think the interesting thing for me, particularly with this entry, not so much with the phone entries because it's tilt control and it's a bit more madcap. You have a great degree of control, but at the same time, there's lots of emergent madness and uncertainty with the jelly physics, but never in a way that feels particularly unfair. So it's this beautiful blend of seeing what happens and feeling empowered to try and like replay to hit high scores, pick up bonus collectibles, find extra exits, all that stuff. So it's a game with a surprising amount of depth, certainly a depth that I wasn't expecting going in. Yeah, so that's my retirements. I believe you have a couple of retirements as well, Alex. One I expected, one I very much did not.
Well, they're not that interesting. Well, I mean, the one you probably didn't expect is Chained Echoes. Yeah, I know. A lot of my retirements are just literally the only reason Chained Echoes is retired. It's not. It's on hold because I got 2 new games that I'm very, very excited to play, and they're shorter. So I was like, well, I'll just beat those and then go back to it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Plus, I got to a point in that game where it's like a pretty good like end point because I've played the tutorial. I know how the game works basically, and so I've just finished like. Yeah, in Chained Echoes in particular, I just finished like a big story beat. And so it's kind of like, you know how like a lot of these JRPGs are kind of like TV shows. You kind of go through like little seasons, right? Where you do like doing stuff. And I kind of hit that with this one. So I'm like, oh, this is actually a good spot to just pause because the next part has more setup for like the next story moments. So I'm kind of like, oh, this is a good area to just kind of put it on hold for now and come back to later. The other one I retired is Persona 5 Strikers. I'm done. I finished. It's like with Shin Megami Tensei 4. I had my fun and I'm done. It's sort of, or was it 5? 5. Yeah, it was 5. There we go. You know what I mean? You get to a point where like, and I find with a lot of these games, like these action RPGs, even with JRPGs, unless the story is super compelling, I tend to fall off a little bit. And if the gameplay is really good, I'll stay on. But Persona 5 Strikers is good. It's just not like amazing for me, you know, like the story is fine, but I've already had like a full 100-something hours with these characters, and I already feel pretty good. And again, clearly I don't remember that well because I didn't even fucking remember Haru was a character even. I was like, who the fuck is this lady? And she so
she's
doesn't
late
fit
game
with
in
them.
your defense.
Yeah, she is. She's late game, and she also feels out of place with the other characters. I don't know what it is, but there's something about her character that just doesn't seem to mesh with them, and it's probably because she's late game, so you don't get to like really know her as well. And then it always just feels like to me like this lady's just kind of here and bumping in on my Phantom Thieves. So yeah, I don't really know if I recommend the game. I think I do if you like really loved Persona 5 and you're looking for more, then like yeah, I'd say like yeah, go ahead, but I don't know. It's fine. It's just like in today's world there are so many good games out there that a game that's like not bad and is like decent is just not enough for me, you know? Like I'm like, it's good, but it's not sparking something in me, you know? I'm not feeling like real excited about it. I'm just feeling kind of like that's a game.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so that's Persona 5 Strikers. That's everything I think that's retired. So I think yeah, this is a quick one. Let's roll right into what we've been playing then, and like Paula, how about you take it over now?
Yeah, so I've been trying to make a competitive. First of all, I'm on my quest to completing the Pokédex on Pokemon Scarlet, and so far I got 370 Pokemon out of 400, so 30 to go.
Crikey.
I'm just waiting
Jesus
here
Christ.
for someone who I'm not gonna name, who is supposed to be playing Violet and getting all the exclusive Pokemon that I would need to complete the Pokédex. That one is Felipe. And hopefully I'll be able to start training hunting sometime soon. And also I've been trying to create a competitive team. So right now I am, as we speak, hatching some Sprigatitos because they're surprisingly good physical sweepers. Neoscaradites at the very least. So I'm trying to get one with 5 IVs, where IVs is the individual values of each Pokemon. And that are perfect. I mean, they're like 31 out of 31. And I'm just trying to get one that has like all individual values at 31 except for a special attack, because this one is a physical attacker. And I'm probably speaking gibberish to you both, but
I mean,
anyway.
yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
I've always heard of EVs, but I've never actually understood what they are. Like, I know they're like, anyway, you know what? Don't even explain it to me. It's fine.
We're just
I mean,
happy you're happy, Paula.
Exactly.
Yeah, the effort values and those are the EVs are the points you train your Pokemon in.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the genetics, those are the IVs, and the training is the EVs. That is
Pokemon
pretty
Eugenics
much
Simulator.
Pretty much.
Yeah, no kidding. And right now I also got Sprigatito with the hidden ability, because Pokemon usually have 1 or 2 abilities that they can come with, like if you encounter them just in the wild. But if you level them through the Terra Raid, in which you can play with up to 4 players, to battle a very strong Terra Pokemon, like a Pokemon that has been terastallized. I think that's the word, which pretty much means it kind of like just change its type with the process of terastallization, and it is a different type from its original type. They still gibberish, and the thing is that those Terra Pokemon, not only have very good stats, they also have the hidden ability. So, for example, Sprigatito has usually the ability overgrowth, where if it has, let's say 30 or 25% of its HP left, it does more damage on grass type attacks. While the other ability, what it does, it is called Protein, and it allows the Pokemon to change its type to the type of the attack it is using. For example, my Mioscarada is dark grass, and it can use, let's say, Flare Up, which is a fairy type move, and it will change its type to the fairy type, which is kind of like terrestrializing, but in the form of an ability. It is kind of weird. And in that way, it gets the same type attack bonus, which will give an extra boost to the attack if it is the same type that the attack is. Sorry, I will leave it at that because both of you don't seem like they're understanding like a leak of it.
It's like, it's not that I don't fully understand. I just realized, like, I'm suddenly realizing probably how my parents felt when I would describe Pokemon names. Like, when you don't know who the new ones are, you haven't seen them. I was like, oh my God, this sounds like gibberish. I was like, who's Sprigatito? Like, that must be one of the new ones, right?
Yes, Sprigatito
Oh, yeah,
is
please
this
show
one.
me.
The
Oh,
little
it's the
one.
cat, the grass cat. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The starter. Okay, there we go. Yeah, this is one of the first Pokemon games that hasn't pulled me in a while. They got me back with X and Y back in the day, and I'm done.
They did get me back with X and Y back in the day too.
Yeah.
That was a good generation.
I liked it a lot. I think some people shit on it, but I'm gonna be real. It brought back a ton of players, especially a lot of us who were playing in the originals. I think X and Y really strung a lot of people back into it.
Yeah, I think Mega Evolutions also gave old Pokemon like Mewtrix to play with. So they brought back Charizard, and later they brought back Pokemon like the other starters and Slowbro. And I'm trying to think other Pokemon that have. And Gyarados has Mega Form too. And so on. It looks like a shrimp, but still a Mega Form. And that is my very overcomplicated explanation of my adventures on Pokemon Scarlet. The other thing that I've been playing, and it's kind of like a way to build my competitive team, is Pokemon Showdown. That it is pretty much a Pokemon battle simulator where you can build your team however you want to test them out before going through the process of getting your Pokemon in-game and breeding them and trying to get like the correct ability LTVs and trying to train them. Which it can honestly be a pain in the butt, especially like in the older games. Though it has been streamlined to hell and back in the newer Pokemon games, which, not gonna lie, it has been a godsend in that regard. The only thing that I'm still bitching about is why do the starter Pokemon gender ratio is 1:7, and I can't get a female Sprigatito to continue my breeding chain here, and it is horrible.
That sentence breeding chain is insane.
Yeah.
It's only okay because it's about like computer monsters, otherwise it gets very sketchy very quickly.
Right.
You know what? Like, if you start talking about Pokemon breeding Pokemon, like you exchanging Pokemon with other people, like you're pretty much trafficking Pokemon at this point, like Team Rocket.
Yeah.
Like in X and Y and Sun and Moon, I was also breeding for a competitive team, and I saved like all those perfect extra perfect Pokemon that I wasn't gonna use and pretty much started trafficking them with my other Pokemon friends that were breeding for other Pokemon. That is like, oh, you have a 5 for IV. Let's,
Oh
I
my
don't
god, you're
know,
so right.
Alolam, Alolam, Ninetales. How about I give you this very special Pikachu for that, because it has like an egg move that is you have to breed for it to get it. And it's like, oh yeah, that sounds like a fair trade. And it's like, yeah, we're trafficking Pokemon. We're not only fighting each other with animals we enslave or like bred for it. We're also trading the Pokemon, and that
Bartering
sounds
for
so
their
fucked up out of
lives.
bounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is funny that like the system they've created goes like so against the morals they put within the like obviously there's nothing actually like it's just a game you're having fun. But like I do think that is kind of funny that like the games themselves kind of go against the very thing that the games are so much fun about.
Yeah, like in the anime, it's like, oh, you're fighting alongside your friends, and this is like a very special Pokemon you caught, and with the power of friendship, you pull through at the last minute. And here you are like, okay, I need my genetically perfectly engineered Meowscarada to win this battle. And if it's not perfect, well, poor
Guess who's
thing
getting
is gonna go
released?
into the it's getting either released or getting to the black market. So
Yeah, or welcome to the breeding chain.
yeah.
There's the episode title right there.
Oh my god, yeah. That's a scary title, but I like it. I like it.
Yeah. Let's get out of this scary place for a little bit. So how about any of you take it away? Rick,
Yeah,
you've
go on,
been
I'll
playing
jump
a
in.
lot of stuff.
I have. I feel like I'm never not playing a lot of stuff, to be fair.
Accurate.
So yeah, it's pretty on the nose. So first thing we've been playing, and this is one that I think we've mentioned in previous episodes, and it's come back in. Part-time UFO is incredible in co-op. I've already played the whole thing through in single player, but it's been lovely sort of re-experiencing it with my girlfriend. There's a particular level that we just played earlier today, actually, where you are rebuilding like a Japanese. I don't know how to describe the building. There's like it's almost like a Japanese sort of war castle sort of thing with there's no good way to describe it. Anyway, you're rebuilding a building. There's some constituent components. You have to put them together in the right order and rebuild the building. While you're doing that, ninjas are popping up at random and throwing shurikens at you. And one of the things you have to do to get a perfect score is not get hit by a shuriken, which was frustrating enough when it was just me playing. But when there's two of you playing and you're coordinating, and not only do you need to dodge the shurikens, but for some of the components, you need a shuriken to hit it to give you something to grab onto to actually move it around with your grabber arm. And it's a hoot. It's the best kind of co-op fun where the game is good and that sort of thing elevates it. It's very simple to understand, really easy to introduce someone to and get them on board with. Having a blast with this one all over again. I am also finally into the groove with Valkyrie profile Lenneth. I have to say I'm quite glad I stuck with this one because it's finally clicked. The opening few hours are painfully slow. I feel like it's where the game really shows its age. But once you're sort of eased into the game's cadence, the fact that the story is for the most part told in vignettes rather than having a proper overarching narrative. There is one, but it doesn't really, certainly at this stage of the game, it doesn't really become its own thing. It's easier to follow once that makes sense to you. It's also worth saying that the combat, once you actually get a few characters and you unlock a few extra abilities, starts to make a lot more sense as well. I do need to have a quick Google because I played this series backwards, and the most recent well, no, that's not true because Elysium technically exists, but Covenant of the Plume on DS, which was a strategy RPG, had most characters having multiple attacks per turn from the off. the original game seems not to give you that immediately unless I've misunderstood something. So I do need to have a quick Google around that. Let me know in the comments if I've been an idiot and what I've missed. But the actual dungeon crawling, once the combat is a little bit more fleshed out, once you've got some more characters to play around with, once you've got a few more abilities, is really, really good as well. I do think this is the kind of game where if you're playing it in this 2023 and beyond, really using a guide is essential. One, because the proper ending is locked behind a series of really arbitrary, obscure, impossible just to intuit requirements. Partially just because it means that you don't have to rely on the game's woeful internal mapping system. And also partly because it's on archive.org. Like, you can just download a scan of the Brady Games guide for Lenneth. So there's no reason not to. Like, the barrier to entry is incredibly low. And it makes the game that much more fun when you can focus on the game itself and you don't have to worry about like holding in your head which of the four like character paths you're on for the story. You don't have to keep track of what's coming at where. You don't have to mentally store the requirements for the Iron Harrier that you're sending, or waste a turn in the overworld going back to the fairy who can tell you those requirements. It frees you up to actually enjoy what the game does well, which is the combat and the world building, and some really nice sort of late 90s pixel art. It is a wee bit stretched out on the PSP release, and I think in hindsight I might have booted up the PSX version and played that on there rather than playing the native PSP port. However, the game as a whole is really fantastic. And certainly now that I've gotten into the swing with it, I'm enjoying it infinitely more than I have been over the past few weeks when I've talked about it previously. Not really any further in FF7 Remake, but I am still playing it. Talked about Citizen Sleeper. I don't need to retread that ground. 2 games left to talk about in terms of playing, both relatively fresh starts. The first is Klonoa 2, Lunatea's Veil for the PS2. I've got a bit of a convoluted setup for this. I'm playing on my phone because phones can emulate PS2 now, which is fucking wild.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Jesus
so
Christ.
I've got one of the fancy Samsung folding devices. So what I've been doing on my commute, if I'm like not feeling an RPG, i.e. Valkyrie profile, I have been booting the emulator up on my phone, putting the phone in a stand. I've got a spare DualShock 4 that I've just got paired up to the phone. And I'm running Klonoa, baby. And I'm just showing my fellow host there.
Dang.
PS2 game,
Wow.
just running on the phone.
The
And
future
it's a
is
good
now.
screen size for it. The future truly is now. What a time to be alive. And it looks great on the screen. I'm still in the first level, but like it's more Klonoa. And Klonoa is great. It's not earth-shatteringly different, but it's solid, unique platforming fun. There's nothing quite like it. And actually, once I've played that, I think I've got the Wonder Swan release and the, like, if I can be bothered, the Game Boy Advance ARPG that got a fan translation. And then basically that's me through the series. I've played both the GBA games. I've played the original. So yeah, no more Klonoa, sad fate. Anyway.
I've heard that ARG is actually pretty good.
I've only played the opening maybe 5 minutes and it seemed quite by the numbers. Maybe that's me just writing it off too early. I am going to come back to it. We'll see, I guess. And then the last one, and this will probably be an interesting segue because it looks like you're playing the remake, Alex.
Darn right.
So not only has Dead Space recently been remade in all its glory for current consoles, and by all accounts, it's actually a phenomenal port, which is a pleasant surprise, or a phenomenal remake, I should say. Recently, the mobile game entitled Dead Space, but in fact, more like Dead Space 1.5. It's like a prequel to Dead Space 2, explaining how the situation is what it is at the outset of that game. What some crazy clever people have done is they found a port of that game for the Xperia Play, the Sony phone that had the slide-out keyboard, a little bit like the PSP Go, but with digital sort of touch-sensitive nubs instead of a proper analog stick. They have ported that to Vita. They've made a wrapper that allows it to be understood natively on the Vita, and released it, obviously without the relevant files, which, even though you can't buy that game anymore, EA literally won't sell it to you because it's not supported on any of the newer devices. You can understand why they didn't want a lawsuit there. But if you know where to look, you can find those files anyway. And having already played that game through once on mobile, it's so different playing it with proper controls. The core game itself so far still holds up, and I'm in the first of 12 chapters, so it's a relatively fresh start. But what a game back when they actually made proper games for mobile, back when they actually tried. Yeah.
Yep, those were
Still
different times.
I'll probably have more to say on both of those next week, but for now, know that I'm playing them. And that probably provides us with an excellent segue actually to you, Alex, and how you're finding, unless you want to talk about the other two first, how you're finding
let's jump into
the Dead Space remake.
Yeah, this there's no reason to play Dead Space 2008 anymore. There just isn't. Like, genuinely, there's absolutely no reason. It's the same thing with Resident Evil 2 remake, where, like, unless, I don't know, you're nostalgic or you can't afford the new one or something, which that's fair. You could go back and play it, but it's incredible. Like, it is. Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to describe how good this is, because it's been ages since I've played Dead Space, though it was one of my favorite games back in the day. Because keep in mind, Dead Space came out in 2008, which is a long time ago now. And I remember
15 years.
Yeah, I remember playing the shit out of it on Xbox. I've played that game at least 2 or 3 times, because it's not super long. It is gorgeous. First off, like, holy shit, gorgeous. No load screens at all. You just start playing and that's it. The Ishimura looks incredible. Sounds amazing. Those goddamn creepy motherfuckers are still terrifying and feel even more lethal than they did before. I got fucking surprise attacked really early on in the game, and I was just done. And I was like, oh my god, like, I forgot how to do, like, the proper combat. Shooting off the limbs is super satisfying. Your stomp sounds so good. I've just been curb stomping these baddies whenever I cut their damn legs off. The UI is incredible. You know, it's all that, like, the fact that there's no, like, it's all, like, in-game UI, right? Like, they give, like, a reason for it to exist. Like, you can see your health on your back, and it looks awesome. The powers are so, like, weighty and just fun. The character animations and everything have been upgraded so well. Isaac looks quite different, but like an actual human being now. And yeah, man, I don't know. It's like, so I haven't bought a new game in a long time, and I technically didn't buy this because I just traded in 3 Xbox games that were not worth 3 together this one game. But hey, EB Games does that trade 3, get it free. And I was like, I'll trade in Xbox games that technically just qualify for your for your promotion. Because it was 3 games that they gave, like, to give an example, I just feel good about this. I love this kind of trading, because I traded Tiny Tina's Wonderlands or whatever, and the highest offer I got trying to sell it on my own was $30, and it traded in for 30. With this promotion. And then it was something like, I don't know, like, I think it was like the Lego game, the Star Wars one, which I'm like, I'm not playing, and Strangers of Paradise, because I thought maybe which, by the way, I bought all of those for less than this game because they were on Boxing Day sales. So I feel like I made some money today, which is nice. But, like, let's be real here. I'm never playing that Stranger of Paradise game. It's apparently just good. And so I was looking at it and I was like, I'm never going to play this. There's so many amazing games right now. I'm never getting to the okay game. It's just not happening. So instead, I got myself Dead Space, and I'm very pleased that I did. I'm going to play this one pretty slowly, I think. I want to kind of savor the experience of this game again. And also, it's really stressful. Because of the effects that they've put into it and, like, the remake's quality. Yeah, I can only play for so long, because then I'm like, I need to breathe. Because this goddamn thing, you never know when someone's coming. And, like, because I haven't played it in so long, like you said, it's been, it's probably been a decade since I've replayed the game at least. I don't remember anything in this game, Like, I'm like, oh, I don't remember what happens next. And for all I know, from what I understand, that it's like extremely faithful. I think they've only changed like some little things in terms of like probably, combat and stuff, and like a little bit of just like quality of life stuff. So yeah, if you like survival horror in the slightest, I 100% recommend getting this game. And I also wanted to support the fact that, like, look, I don't like EA. I don't think many of us do. But they did right by this game. There's no season pass shit. They didn't try to add in any more fucking shit like they did with Dead Space 3. They just let them remake Dead Space properly. And it's just, you just buy it and that's it. You got your game. You're good to go. Like, that's all you got to do. And so I'm just like, okay, thank you. Please remake Dead Space 2 and then let them completely change Dead Space 3. That would be lovely. Or at least just like, let this series become a thing again, because I think they mostly handled this series correctly. It was really just the overreach in Dead Space 3 that kind of screwed things up, because I think Dead Space 2 is arguably even better than Dead Space 1. Though they're actually really close to each other. And this basically just turns it into the definitive Dead Space experience. And my God, I can completely see why Callisto Protocol tried to rush their game out, because ain't nothing touching this fucking game. So anyway, that's Dead Space. You've played Dead Space, right, Rick?
I played it, the original, on PS3.
Okay.
Crikey, I was still... It must have been like 4 or 5 years ago now. Certainly not like when it came out, but not that long after. Great game. I'm not really a big survival horror guy. This, I think, is one of those games where whether you like the genre or not, it's the kind of game that you can still get behind. That was certainly the case for me. I also, obviously, as well as the mobile game, played and loved the Wii spin-off, Dead Space Extraction, which is a point-and-click shooter. It's really, really good. I think one of the PS3 Dead Space releases included like a PlayStation Move compatible version of it. So if people are emulating, if they have a setup that can make that work, that might be another way to play it. Equally, Dolphin's so easy to run on like most things now.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe they'll make it for VR. I don't know.
Oh, that would be good for VR. I do think that's one that actually holds up better with time, because I think at the time it released, we were all a little Dead Space hungry, and it's like, oh, okay, an on-rail shooter? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it was a little bit like, really? That's what we're getting? Dead Space? Okay. And now, being separated from that and just wanting more Dead Space, I think going back to Extraction is probably a much better experience at this point, because it's like, you can just accept what it is. You don't have the initial disappointment of like, really? An on-rail shooter? You know what I mean?
I don't think anyone was expecting a proper Dead Space experience. Anyone that did was deluded.
No, it's not. I don't think that's
a really cool companion piece.
That's not what I'm talking about, though. I mean, the fact that when you announce it, it's like you're putting resources into that, and while you're fucking up Dead Space 3, like.
Sure. Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah, that's how I felt at the time. I was like, for fucking real? Are you serious? Come on. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So yeah, that's Dead Space. Playing that. I'm still playing Pokemon Prism. I'm just like slowly making my way through it. I'm on this weird little I'm in a prison right now, which is actually pretty funny. I'm fighting all the inmates. The game's pretty funny, I have to say. They've got some pretty good quips within there that I'm like, you know what? You guys have a nice sense of humor, and it doesn't like fully break the world. It's not like trying to be too meta referential. It's just like fun shit. So I'm enjoying that. Still playing Gears of War Ultimate Edition with my partner. We haven't gotten much farther into it. It's still fun. It's still really dumb. But like, I wouldn't have it any other way. One other game that I'm playing before I talk about my favorite game that I'm playing right now, I'm playing Cube Escape Paradox, which is like the last Cube Escape game.
Liar, you said you'd completed them, naughty Alex.
No. This is separate from the collection.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. I beat the collection.
Oh.
Samsara Room and Cube Escape Paradox are completely separate. Because Cube Escape
I knew
Paradox.
Samsara wasn't. I didn't realize Paradox was. Okay.
Yeah, Paradox has 2 chapters in it. The first chapter is free, and then you have to pay for the second
Pay
chapter.
for the second. Yeah, fair enough.
And they have a video too, like a movie, an 18-minute movie that you can watch. That's actually quite good. Because I think they kickstarted this one. I don't know if most of their games are kickstarted. I really haven't looked into that, but this one I think is 100% kickstarted. Because like in the first one, there's like a file folder you can open that has like just hundreds of photos of people, and I'm like, all right, these all have to be Kickstarter backers because they're anyway. It looks very obviously like Kickstarter backers because they're just like regular folks mixed in with some puzzle clues, which I have to admit I fucking hated. I was like, God damn it, you're making me cycle through all your fucking Kickstarter backers to get clues. I was like, it's cool that they fucking funded the game, but I paid for it too. Can I just get rid of this? I wish you could have that option. Pay to get rid of Kickstarter backers. Nothing ruins your immersion like a bunch of Kickstarter backers. With just like very like weird headshots of like just selfies. Anyway, Samsara Room is good. This one I actually feel like is truly the end. I actually feel like I'm getting a lot of answers as I'm playing the game. And it really seems to be wrapping everything up nicely. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's Cube Escape, so like obviously it's not gonna fully wrap things up. They can do whatever they want, but I do feel like I'm getting to like the crux of it, which is quite nice, and more so in the second chapter than in the first chapter. The first chapter, yeah, you get a little bit, but as you enter into the second chapter, you're like, okay, I think I'm seeing where you're going here, and this is pretty cool. I like it. So yeah, it's a good time. I'm gonna play the Rusty Lake games afterwards. I think they kind of just like slot into Cube Escape in like different areas because like again, the Cube Escape games have a chronology, but kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's more like a chronology of information, not necessarily like a real time chronology. But yeah,
I kind of want to play all the Cube Escape games like in the proper order this time because I played Samsara Room as my first Cube Escape game ever. And you said it ties
it's the
up a lot
prequel.
of the stuff. Yeah. But also I'm trying to think, hey, maybe I could play all the Cube Escape games in the quote-unquote correct order.
Mm-hmm.
And then try to find a YouTube video of some tinfoil hat guy trying to tie everything together just for the fun of it.
I'm certain that exists. Like I
Surely,
have
yeah.
zero doubt in my mind that there is a bunch of shit that tries to like explain the lore and the connection between them. Yeah, that's out there for sure. Anyway, you should do that. I'd be happy to talk about it with you. I think Paradox actually connects everything a little bit more than Samsara Room does. But Samsara Room definitely does a bit of that. It at least shows you a bit of the start of it, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I just think you should play them in order. It's fun. And they're not very long, so, you know, why not? Okay, the last game that I am playing, which is by far my favorite and easily the best game of the year so far, is Hi-Fi Rush. This game is one of the greatest games I have played in years. If this came out last year, it would have been my game of the year probably. This came out of fucking nowhere. Literally out of fucking nowhere. Xbox was just like, hey, by the way, Bethesda's Tango Gameworks, the guys who made The Evil Within, have made an action rhythm game. Have fun. And it was like, what? It's on Game Pass. It's out now. Holy shit. And guys, I'm not exaggerating. This game is incredible. And the reason that I would call it incredible, so like the concept behind it, it looks a lot like Spider-Verse, actually. It takes like a really cartoony style of like comic book-esque animation style. And like there's all these little pows and like, you know, little, whenever he moves, it'll like make little movement stuff. And the cutscenes straight up look like you're watching a high budget animated film. Like it's seamless. It looks beautiful. Its style is impeccable. And the whole idea is that you're this guy, Chai, who he's got like a busted arm. And there's this thing called Project Armstrong, which they're like take people and they give them like cybernetic upgrades. And it's clearly there's something nefarious because like he gets brought in and they're like, oh, he'll be perfect for waste management. And so like what he's collecting, and he wants to be like a rock star. But when he gets in and he's doing the surgery on this big factory line, his iPod, he's obsessed with music, lands on his chest. And when the surgery happens and he gets his magnetic arm, his iPod gets shoved into him. And so now his like magnetic arm is being powered by music. And so the whole world is going to the beat of the music. And so all the combat is rhythm based, where you're trying to hit based on the rhythms. And they have all this movement shit. Like you've got, your light heavy attack, but then you have like extra characters who can come in and help you. You have like a zip line that like hooks you towards them. You have these special moves that you could do and these big special attacks that you can let off. And all of it is synchronized to the beat. And so every combat that you have, you get like, score tabulator going up. And kind of like in Bayonetta or like Devil May Cry. And then at the end, it'll kind of tabulate like, how on beat were you? How high was your combo? Etc. And it's not a particularly challenging game. I'm playing it on hard, actually, which I really recommend people do if you have a little bit of experience. They're not trying to punish you for not being on rhythm. They're trying to encourage you to get on rhythm. So like they're really teaching you how to do that. And you can press one of the... I don't know how to call these anymore because like they don't have starter select anymore, but what would be the equivalent of the select button? The left one turns on a rhythm like bar that shows you what the beats are. And then you can just turn that off. So like you can really quickly turn it on if you need to get back on beat. But the whole world is like literally bouncing to the beat. So like the environment, you see it like kind of moving and bouncing, and the enemies attack on beat as well. So you time your dodges to the beat, you time your attacks to the beat, you see somebody getting ready to attack, and then he'll hit on beat, so you just dodge on beat. And so you enter into this flow that is like giddily exciting. Like you feel like a kid. You're just like, this is so much fun. Like it's just like really fun and intense. And the best way I can describe this is like, that era of games like Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter, and like there were all these games that were just like really cartoony but really fun platformers, and they just felt like they know what they are, right? Like they're just trying to hit a style and have fun with it. And that's what this feels like. It sounds so stupid, but it feels like a video game in the best possible way. Like it's not trying to be some kind of like, it's not like, oh, we're going to be this high art, exploration of this like deep, intense thing. It's like, hey, do you want to have fun? Do you want fun to be the primary motivator of your experience with our game? Come on in. Like that's what it is. It's like every choice seems to be made with the idea of having a good time as its primary reason for existing in the game. And I am so here for it. And like you can unlock special attacks and stuff, and like there's a bunch of secrets to find. You're like platforming around these different stages. It's broken up into stages and whatnot. The voice acting's great. Chai is voiced by the guy who voiced Peter Parker in like the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, which is one of my favorite. It's like the best Spider-Man cartoon out there, though I have a soft spot for the 90s one. But he's just excellent voice actor. God damn, I can't even, like the style of this game. And it has licensed music and everything, though they do have a nice thing where like if you are a streamer, they have a streamer mode where you can just use their like home own music that they made for it. But every once in a while, you'll like have songs that are, like popular songs as well. Which also the boss fights, oh my God, they're very, very fun. They have these huge, intense boss fights that, of course, are, tied to the rhythm. And it's fucking hilarious, actually. Sorry, I have so much to talk about with this game. So they have this thing, which I absolutely love. They have really good involved tutorials, but they also make it so that you can just skip all the hint stuff. And like, there's actually some tutorials you can just kind of skip out on. But they have this thing called like the hint bot, who's really funny. Like it's this big like sign, and whenever you come up, he's like, I feel such a strong connection between us. And like he'll like do all this stuff where he's like enamored with you. And if you stop talking to him, like if you close it early, he's like, oh wow, our connection is so strong, you didn't even have to finish our conversation. Like it's like one of those things where like it's just like it has all this like little like quips and stuff, and like all these little robots are like, they're so fucking funny and miserable. Like there's one robot who's like has these tiny little arms, and he's carrying like 10 boxes, and he's just like, I wish they would give me more realistic goals. I have such tiny little arms. Like it's just like going all these boxes, and it's just all these like little things. Like everybody is just like really cutely funny, and like not but like in universe funny, like it's not necessarily just like a bunch of meta humor. It's just like oh, this universe is like kind of ridiculous, like this kind of corporate capitalistic sort of nightmare. And like all these little robots are like sentient, but have like quite funny little dialogues with each other. So every time I pass a robot, I want to click on them because I want to see what they're going to say. And it's all voiced. Even like those little robots on the side are all voiced, but you can like kind of skip quickly through it. So yeah, I don't like. What's also crazy about this is like releases out of nowhere, not a single issue in this game. Like no bugs, anything, nothing like that. Like it is flawless right now for me. And I'm just like, how did they keep this under wraps? It's so good. I'm sure within the gaming industry, a bunch of people probably knew about it because, you know, you can't keep it that under wraps. But fuck, man. I play this game now is what I would say. Like that's it. If it's not in Game of the Year conversations at the end of the year, I will be really, really surprised because it's genuinely one of the best games I've played in so long. And you will just be grinning ear to ear while playing this one.
It looks great. I just hope the specs aren't too beefy so that I can run it.
Yeah, I don't think they would be because like I don't know, the stylized art style I'm hoping isn't too intense, but who knows? Yeah, who knows? If you got a PC or you got an Xbox, give it a shot. It's on Game Pass. That's just free. Bye. And you can buy it on Steam if you don't have Game Pass or an Epic or whatever. Like it's also released and it's a discount price too, which is also crazy to me. Like it's not a full priced game, and I'm like clearly should be. It's fucking. It's so damn polished. It's better than most of the full release games that are out there. To tell you how good it is, Dead Space is one of my favorite games, and as I've been playing Dead Space, I was like, God, I want to go back and play Hi-Fi Rush. So I just switched back over. That's how good it is. Anyway, that's it for what I've been playing and what we've all been playing. Lots of good games, lots of new games, fun games. Let's move into our topic, which was given to us by R2D21999 on the Discord. And by the way, because they asked, like, are you guys still taking questions? We do still take questions if you have stuff for us. We just don't have like a dedicated question segment anymore because we realized the questions are just kind of a topic. And we, you know, this is episode 102. There's not that many questions to ask. But the topic they gave in is, when do you guys no longer consider a game as modern, quote unquote? And I'm just going to read what R2D2 said first, and then we'll give our thoughts here. Because for me, I would think that games like, 10 plus years old are no longer modern. But then there's games like Minecraft made in 2011, and it's still getting updates. And that's something I wanted to hit on as well, actually. But I want to hear from you as well. What is your kind of definition of a modern game?
Tricky, right? I don't know that I have a definition because I think there's what is modern and there's what feels modern. And I mean, the example I keep coming back to is how modern certain retro games, Super Metroid is the obvious one, despite the fact that came out in 94, you could be forgiven for thinking that was like a modern sort of small team indie project that was just really lovingly put together and perfectly there. So there's a question mark over like what feels like it is of the current day. But I think in terms of like when a game isn't modern anymore, I still think of PS4 games as modern. I don't think of PS3 games as modern, if that makes sense.
It does.
But I think even before PS5 came out, I didn't really think of PS3 games as modern towards the back end of the PS4 life cycle. I feel like, this gen or, 5 years out is where it starts to hit that point. But it's such it's a question that probably needs more context. Like what would you call modern?
Well,
I don't really know what I would call a modern game.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this because I was thinking about why, because I know some people when we mention this sort of thing, like the idea of modern versus retro, a lot of people I think push back on the definitions because they're like, well, what's the use of them? Which I think is a fair instinct. For me, partly what I think, I actually think this conversation is quite useful because I think definitions within this help give us kind of organizing principles for like how we view games and how we kind of organize our thoughts and our kind of understanding of what we enjoy in gaming. So like from that kind of angle, I think it's actually quite useful to do this kind of thinking to ourselves of like, what is modern to me now, and what does modern kind of mean? And I think what you hit on there a little bit, I don't think of modern in terms of like you mentioned, time, right? Because I don't think a modern game is necessarily based solely on when it is released. Because we could argue that, for instance, I mean, remember we talked about the itch games, right? Like Black Iris, remember last year, the PS1 inspired thing. That doesn't feel modern at all. It feels retro, right? It's in that world because it doesn't maintain modern aesthetics or modern control and modern design. And I think that, to me, is more where I enter into the modern. And I think perhaps an issue, actually, with gaming in general is that we don't, because it is such a new form of entertainment, we don't actually have, like, major classifications for eras of gaming yet. Right? Like, we'll sometimes say the aughts, or we'll say, you know, in the 90s and the 80s, whatever. But when you think of, like, furniture even, like, honestly, just even furniture, or film too. Film has these classifications, but furniture will have, like, you know, the modern era, or even art, the postmodern, the Renaissance, like, you know, romanticism, all this stuff, which we organize and then become, you know, descriptors for the types of paintings. Even if they're made today, you could say, well, okay, well, they're painting in a postmodern style or in a cubist style, et cetera, et cetera. I think we kind of need some of that. And we sort of do with gaming, where we use it based on genre, but we've already noticed how ineffective that is. Like Metroidvania, right? What the fuck? Everything's a Metroidvania, apparently. Everything's a roguelite or a roguelike. I think tying it to gameplay mechanics hasn't actually been overly successful. But you know, no definition ever really it can be. It often leaves something lacking. So, okay, that's a really long preamble for what I think in terms of modern. And again, I think I'm thinking in terms of aesthetics and gameplay. And Minecraft, I think, was a really interesting one. I didn't even realize that they had mentioned Minecraft until I was like reading and putting the comment in today. Because Minecraft, to me, if we had gone based off time, would clearly be a retro game at this point, right? I mean, years ago. But part of the issue, and what's interesting with that game, is that aesthetically, that game has never been retro, or has always been retro, right? In terms of its aesthetic, in terms of its look. But then also, its gameplay-wise, that game is constantly maintained and updated, which I think removes it from the ability of being a retro game. It is a modern game in the sense that it maintains and it actually responds to the player and what the players are interested in, and it updates and adds to its existing world, making it more and more modern as it goes along. So yeah, I think that's like a case study for me that would like kind of exemplify it a little. I'll talk about some more after, but Paula, I want to hear, or you know, Rick, Paula, whatever you want to respond or add to.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because there are many games that I would like. I would probably consider retro anything like from the NES era or the N64 era. Like those games feel old to me, but why do they feel old? Partially is because some of the gameplay aspects of it feel old because of either console limitation or hardware limitation, or maybe because of how clunky it feels, maybe, or the overall art style, like the low poly aesthetic definitely fits with a more retro definition, I guess. But what I think keeps a game from being modern, or like keeps a game being retro, or like the other way around, I think does this game fit with what we consider like gaming today in a way? For example, I was thinking, hey, Age of Empires 2 is still being played, and it released all the way in 1999. And I'm like, yikes, I'm old. But also, the way they did Age of Empires 4, the way they make it feel more like up to date. Not only it's because of the graphics, but because of how they balance things out, and in the overall game design. Because if you go and play Age of Empires 2, a lot of the civilizations feel like palette swaps of one another. Like they have very few like tangible differences between them. You have to go to the actual stats of each thing to know like how they're different. Well, in Age of Empires 4, you see the different civilizations and you say, yeah, these are clearly different because one of them has a clear orientation towards cavalry, and this one has camels, like camel riders, and they like are like anti-cavalry and stuff like that. And then you have the new civilizations that are like vastly different from anything else because of how they work. And in that way, you can see how the more older design of the original, of Age of Empires 2 starts showing the game's age. No pun intended. But also you have moments where, or like cases where you modernize a game to fit like the current gamer. Like, for example, Link's Awakening in the original Game Boy, like you have the Game Boy and Game Boy Color version, but whatever. In that case, you are so limited on the amount of inputs you have, yet the game kind of like went above and beyond on trying to make everything work with what little it had. That when the game went through the remake on Switch, they added like the extra button items, and they added like, hey, yeah, now you can swap the sword. You have the B-Fort sword and this other button for this other thing, and then you have like all these other buttons that you can map however you want to whatever item. And just with that, there isn't like anything like to different, like there isn't anything different in how the story is structured or how you go through the world. The main difference is, hey, you don't have to pause every 2 minutes to swap your items, or like every other minute to swap your items. And that alone, I think, make the game like so, like it doesn't show its age at all in that case, because you have this wonderful, beautiful world to explore, which you can go like wherever you want, which is like a concept that is like, hey, we're doing an open world concept in this game, but it is like a smaller world. You can go wherever you want pretty much, and you can try to tackle some of the dungeons in whichever order. And in that case, it's like I don't know. Wait, was it?
But again,
that one the game?
Yeah, I don't think
again,
Link's Awakening is not like that. Link's Awakening, you have a very specific order, but
yeah, you have that very specific order. I was thinking about the other game, the A Link Between Worlds, that does the different kind of order, but still, like, or we can go with that game instead, like, but still like an older game. I think it's more than 10 years old, but whatever. You have like, and that from that time, like modern concepts, I guess. So how they try to do it is like, hey, we have more or less the same game, but we are building it again for modern for people that are playing now. So in that case, like it's weird because it feels like old Zelda because you associate like the top-down perspective to old Zelda, but it also feels new and it doesn't feel clanky. That's what I'm trying to talk about.
But I think
like,
so. I think you're dancing around the aesthetic and the gameplay mechanics a bit. You know what I mean? Like, because part of what it sounds like you're describing is that Link Between Worlds, for example. Yes, it shares the perspective of Link to the Past, aesthetically it's
Yeah.
been upgraded, right? It's 3D models. It's a 3D world.
Yeah.
It looks like in this area. And then, like you mentioned, gameplay wise, it's unlocked. It has so many more mechanics and assistance that I think kind of pushes it into that modern world, right? It like sets it next to games that you're like, I could be playing this right now. Like no one's iterated and made and improved on this yet, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that iteration and improvement is maybe another way of looking at this question. So maybe a game ceases to be modern when it is superseded. Almost think like the zeitgeist approach. So to go back to Age of Empires 4 supersedes it in ways of balance, scope, scale. Thinking, to come back to the Metroid example, although Dread is more modern, arguably there's not necessarily the sense that Super Metroid isn't, because in a lot of ways, Dread doesn't supersede it. It has its own different drawbacks and failings, and that's not to say that only things that feel modern are things that are better, but I think it's where there's progression.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe is another way of saying it.
exactly, because like one can argue that Battlefront, the first new Battlefront game, which is clearly, I think, not as superior as the original Battlefront games. Battlefront 2, they got better. But we would argue it certainly is modern. It definitely added modern things to it, because I think that's a really important point you're bringing up, that modern isn't a value statement. It's an aesthetic and gameplay statement, right? It's like a statement on practices, on what's being used now, on what's recognized as modernity, right? Because I think sometimes we think new better, or that's how it gets thrown about, but that's not necessarily where we're coming from, right? Like it's like, yeah, okay, just because this game is modern simply means it holds certain things to it. For instance, Battlefront 2, the new one, has a shit ton of microtransactions. None of that in the first Battlefront 2. There's this part of this retro in it, right? It's like this game actually has older practices within it than what we have now.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
Like,
another maybe more obscure example is the recent remake of 13, the sort of comic book inspired FPS. The original on PC and was it 6th gen? PS2, GameCube,
I think
Xbox?
so.
I forget which number's which.
Might have been Wii,
nevertheless,
actually.
Wii 360?
I think so, yeah.
PS3, 5th or 6th gen, whichever one it happens to be, the PS2 generation, is absolutely objectively a better game than the modern Microids remake.
Yeah.
But the remake is absolutely modern in the sense that the graphics are better. It is made with modern sensibilities and mod. I think they'd added multiplayer. I might be completely making that up. But it was in a modern engine, and that gave them more options to add and supersede things in those sense. And it's more readily playable. I think that's also a factor. Modernity also comes from what you're accessing it on. Whether that's, first party supported emulation, whether that is a first party console, whether that's, needing modern PC hardware to run it. I think it's not the be all and end all, but it's absolutely a factor.
I think that's
another thing that Alex briefly touched on is that we don't really have era of gaming, because the media is so new at this point. But we do have at some points in time where you look at the game, for example, I can't remember the exact years, but where every other game seemed to be made of mud in the color palette.
It's Gears of War era. It's the late aughts. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and now you could say the eras of gaming would be hey, the big guys are trying to milk this concept. So, for example, one of the newest one is probably the open world concept, which is very funny because there are other games that do have that concept. I'm gonna say Minecraft because you can do whatever you want in Minecraft, and they do things in different order, or just exist in the world, and you don't really have a proper objective in those games, in that game.
To be fair, I think you're talking about a different kind of open world right now too, though, right? It's the open world tower game, right? It's the
Oh yeah.
yeah, like that is like a new modern aesthetic that is actually I think going away. It's actually starting to phase out into the battle royale.
Yeah. The battle royale like always comes back in a way. Like like before the open world, it was the battle royale, and now the open world is like phasing, and the battle royale is back. Like
Yeah. No, we go through major waves in gaming. Anyway, sorry, you were saying?
yeah, I was trying to think because I had an idea and it just went away, and I'm sad
Oh
now.
no. Well, you were talking about the open world and how that's is a big thing now. Minecraft, how it was an open world, but
And just before that, what was the? Oh yeah, I remember now.
there we go.
So, I did say that how a game feels like when you're controlling it, like makes it feel like modern or not. Like if a game doesn't include like quality of life improvements that has been like piling up over like the last few years, like for example, a movable camera in a 3D environment. You pretty much take that for granted, but for example, Pokemon before the Switch era, and even like Pokemon on the Let's Go remakes of Pokemon Yellow, they are technically well they're top down, but for example on Sun and Moon meetings, there's no movable camera. The camera always follows the character through their adventure, like it's something like top down, and it's like let me move the camera because like some of the ambience like feel like something I should be able to move the camera in. And one of the things that people actually kind of like laugh about online was when on X and Y they said, hey, no, not X and Y, sorry, Sword and Shield. One of the things the developers said was like, hey, we do have a freely moving camera now. And that is one thing that people usually take for granted, to the degree that it was like, hey, we're playing on 2017, 18, 19. We're not in the retro era where the camera couldn't move. So there are things that you expect from a modern feeling game in that regard.
Albeit that depends on genre, and there's lots of sort of carveaways on that. And I think
I mean, yeah, it depends.
What's interesting with that is I think if you're asking the question, in a gaming magazine article in the early noughties, when does the game cease to become modern? You might be saying, well, if you ask 5 years before that, the advent of lots of first-person or 3D movable cameras is something that would make certain games before them seem less modern. But I think now it is just ubiquitous, and I don't think it necessarily means anything either way. There are PS2 games that we absolutely wouldn't call modern that would have had fully 3D movable cameras and worlds. And so there's things that are a factor but will cease to become a factor. And I suppose that's the interesting thing with this question. The goalposts are ever moving.
I think that's part of the point, though, isn't it? That like that these items, like, and within genres, there are different things that quantify it as becoming modern. Like, and you can argue that like games can fail the standard of what's modern when they're released at times. I think Pokemon consistently fails to be modern. Honestly, I truly think that series, even the most recent one, is not a modern game. It feels like a retro at this point. Not even retro. It feels like something else, right? It feels like it misses the bar of modern. Like, honestly, I really think so. Like Dead Space, the remake, for instance, is a game where it feels extremely modern, where you're like, wow, this is hitting on all of like the most current practices within gaming and in improving things to make it feel seamless now, right? With the material that it has. And maybe that's another thing too, because Paula, you hit on this, is like the controls, but also the feel of a game, right? Where it's like, does the game function right now with as limited as possible roadblocks to get into it? You know what I mean? Where like the game goes smoothly, you can jump into it, it's fine, it works, it functions with the current, whatever that you have. So you start to enter it, and maybe we need more because again, we just added the retro thing onto this. This really was only talking about modern, but I almost feel like we need more definitions besides retro, right? Because like think about classic cars and stuff. They have all these different definitions for the different kinds, and I sort of wish we had some of that too. Because there are games that it's like, I wouldn't say, for instance, I still don't think Sun and Moon is retro at this point. I wouldn't call them that, but I do think there's something. They're certainly not modern, but they're not quite in a retro world yet. Outdated, perhaps.
There is something important you picked up there, though, which is that the retro is sort of an important point in that assessment. So, like, when we talk about quality of life improvements and things lacking those quality of life improvements, I think that's at the core of what makes something cease to be modern, is when there are newer games that have improvements that it is so obvious coming back that game lacks. I think maybe another interesting one that comes to mind in that regard is if you were to play Borderlands 2, having played Borderlands 3, as I understand it, 3 adds vaulting, more integrated sort of cover mechanics, things that then when you go back and play Borderlands 2, you recognize that you lack those things in the moment-to-moment gameplay.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you on that. I mean, that's like, it's like Red Dead Redemption 2 releases and Red Dead is now officially fully retro. Was still kind of fine. It was fun to play, but you're like, oh, bye-bye. And like even, outdated, I think is maybe one of the ways to say it. Like games become outdated really quickly, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like, again, this is not a quality statement, but I do think it's an important thing to note. Like, there's lots of us who wait to play games until much later. And the reality is that it's like, that's a perfectly legitimate way to do it. But also keep in mind that you're going to be very far behind on some of the quality of life improvements that have happened. Maybe it's a better idea to do that so that you don't get spoiled by the quality of life improvements, because it can make going back to outdated games sort of tough sometimes. Like, I won't lie, I play tons of retro games, love it. But there are moments in those games where I'm like, God, I really wish people had discovered this at this point, Like, and usually it's around save systems and stuff where you're just like, man, like I really wish people knew about this, or were able to implement this or that, et cetera, et cetera.
90s era game menus are a roller coaster.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my
I
God.
know
On that
that,
note, has anyone got
Would it-
anything particular they want to jump in with on this, or have we exhausted what we have potentially?
I actually have like a very, like, I guess a weird question, but would you qualify a game where you need to read the manual to get started like a retro game? Because like that is one thing that older games have, like they have like an actual little book with them that is the game manual. And in that case, would you consider games that need you to go through that game manual to understand what the fuck you're doing, a retro game?
Well, flip that question around. Like, one of the things that would have made a game that required that feel outdated or no longer be considered modern is the fact that newer games were coming out with capacity on the cartridge to include a tutorial to explain
Yeah.
what you need to do as part of the game.
Exactly.
So I think, yeah, definitely that's something that would be a disqualifier from the moniker modern.
Yeah, big time. I
And
think.
I think that.
Go ahead, Rick.
No, you're okay. I was.
Oh, all right. I think I was. Well, shit. Now I don't know if I remember. I think, yeah, like I agree with you where it's like that immediately to me, if a game requires me to do that, I would immediately be like, this is outdated. This is to me, it would feel as though this game is making a choice to reject modern usage of gaming, right? And I don't think you could even, I truly think at this point, if you're not embracing modern design, you're choosing to embrace outmoded design, which is fine, because there might be a specific reason that you need to do that. But I think...
A la Tunic.
Exactly, right? And Tunic picks this, and it picks and chooses its modern and its retro sensibilities, and it mixes them. And I think there's a real beauty and blend that can happen with that, right? Because like we said, modern doesn't always mean better. It just means modern. It means current. So I think this is also why it's important to recognize what is modern and what is not, because it allows you to decide and help pick and choose what you want to be referencing. And also, how much of a feel do you want your game to have, right? Do you want your game to really evoke a sense of retro? For instance, I'm thinking even on a lot of itch stuff does this, right? Thinking of Black Castle, right? Where I go, okay, I play that game and I recognize a lot of what the game's doing because it's using retro mechanics from a really specific line of games in a time period. Now, the issue is that that's extremely isolating, right? For a lot of gamers. But they choose that, and that aesthetic works as a whole. So anyway, it's decisions that must be made.
And it's not unique to gaming as well. It's worth maybe taking a brief moment to recognize that. An easy analog is The Lighthouse, the Willem Dafoe, Robert Pattinson film, where they chose to shoot in 4:3. They chose to film in black and white because they were evoking a sense of place and time. And although gaming is a younger medium, just the same, it is a choice with its own pros and cons that you make with an intended outcome.
Yeah. I mean, anytime a game chooses to, do the 2D aesthetic, you immediately enter into a retro world, right? Like, I don't care how advanced you make your game, you can't really escape the fact that that is an outmoded version of game design, which is fine because some of my favorite games are 2D. But it is you are going to create illusions within your audience to retro games. Which can be good or bad, because if you're not excellent, I'm immediately going to be thinking about those great 2D games that I played.
Lots of competition, yeah.
Right? Yeah, cool. That's a good conversation. Anything else you wanted to add, Paula? I don't know if you had anything else pop in there.
Not really. Just trying to think like where some games like visual novels fall into. Like obviously, like not Wonder because it barely has gameplay, but
Well,
is it really retro? Like,
those were outmoded the minute they were made. I mean, they're a
They're
novel
like,
on a computer. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly think almost every single one of those is outmoded and outdated. And that's fine because that genre rarely modernizes anything.
True.
Yeah. But again, you could argue that within the genre there are modern practices. You know what I mean?
Like being able to skip everything you already read.
Exactly. Like that's a modern practice for an unmodern system of gaming. Nice. Well, now that we've thoroughly discussed, actually, we really did discuss that for a lot. That was like 30 minutes on modernity. So good question. Please, if you have any other questions, let us know. But now let's go to How Long to Beat the Game. It's my turn because we're in a new round. Rick won last one.
So we're gonna play.
So he's gonna decide what's the next game. We should do something on Game Pass again because they're really good.
If Paula would play Citizen Sleeper first, please, that would be great. Thank you.
I know. I'm sorry.
Let's see here. Okay, randomizing now. Oh, interesting. I've never heard of this. Yeah, actually, this is a really interesting one. This is a game called Doom and Destiny. It's an old school RPG with an unconventional mood. Strange events bring 4 nerdy friends in a fantasy world made of cliches, strange people, and a lot of humor. Okay, I can't read the rest of it because it's a spoiler in terms of how much time is in the game. Literally, the next line was like featuring blank amounts of hours of fun.
I've literally never heard of it.
Me neither. It has an indie games thing at the top. It was released for mobile, PC, and Xbox One in 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Xbox One specifically. That's surely that.
Wait, before I go into the Steam page,
maybe
can you
not
check
Xbox,
if there's like a spoiler?
Don't go on How Long to Beat. And in fact,
thing?
I wouldn't look up much of this, please. Don't click on anything with writing because you might get a spoiler for it. Because its log line, I think, talks about the hours. So tread carefully.
Okay.
but that could just be on How Long to Beat.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm gonna close Steam before I open the page then.
I can describe it for you. Look up images and stuff.
Okie dokie.
But yeah, I've just never ever heard of this.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look bad.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wonder how it rated. That would be an interesting one down
It
the
would be
line. So
interesting.
obviously you're going to want main plus
Yeah.
and like 100%.
And I think what I'm gonna want, let's see here. How many people have this game backlogged?
Ooh, okay.
Because I think that's interesting, considering we've just heard of this game today. But has the world just heard of this game today?
Also, when was this game made? Like, it kind of
Yeah,
like reminds me
2011.
of. Yeah, the menu system reminds me of RPG Maker.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I've never heard of the developer, Heartbit Interactive. I've never heard of that. Which I don't know what that means. I mean, could mean anything, really. I mean, they might have done a lot of stuff. Who knows?
My stuff's in.
I'm not always super up to date on all this. Okay, I think.
Wait, this
very
is
much
the
shooting
base
in the dark.
Human Destiny, not Human Destiny Advance? Because I just learned there's
There's
an
multiple Doom and
Advance version.
Destinies. I think it's the original one.
It's just
I
Doom and
think.
Destiny. Yeah, I have nothing else to indicate that this is anything besides the original.
Because there's a Doom and Destiny something out on Switch.
Oh,
yeah.
is there? Interesting.
Wait.
That was like the first thing that came up when I Googled it was Doom and Destiny Worlds out now on Nintendo Switch.
Okay, so it's a series that's
let me
ongoing, I guess. That's interesting.
Sure looks that way, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it
Anyway.
really has that RPG Maker vibe, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. That's
That
a good way of
shit
putting it.
aesthetic. I fucking hate that aesthetic so
The one
much.
where
It's
you
so
hope the
clean and
gameplay speaks for
assety.
itself.
Yeah. I mean, I respect that it's a thing, and like it's nice that it allows people to make games, like I don't want to like totally harsh on it too much, but
However.
personally I find the aesthetic appalling.
Wait, how many people are playing the game, or
Have
how many people
backlogged the
have
game.
it backlogged?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, how many have it backlogged? Interesting. Yeah, rarely do we get a game that I've just never heard of, but this one seemed interesting to me.
Okay,
This,
there you
I think,
go.
Ludopocalypse or whatever it was called, and like maybe one or two others.
Yeah, a bunch of the booby ones.
The ones we pretending we haven't heard of.
I mean, legit, I hadn't heard of some of those ones, like the waifu space shooter or whatever.
Oh God, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
We-
something.
We've got some times in here. So let's go through this. So for main time here, Rick is saying 10 hours and Paula is saying 12 hours. And Paula is right on the money. It is in fact 12 hours. So that's going to be 1 point to Paula. Next up, we've got main plus. So in this one, Paula has said 18 hours and Rick has said 20 hours. And the time is, in fact, 22 hours. So Rick just gets up on that one. Let's see here, 22.
1-0.
Gotcha,
Okay,
gotcha.
next we have completionist. So, or 100% basically. Rick has said 24 hours and Paula has said 30 hours. It's actually 30 and a half hours. So that is going to Paula.
Whee!
Pretty close. Now, the next one here is the backlogs. And Paula has said 15 have this backlogged, and Rick has said 130. And you're both really off. It's actually
Ooh.
200 that have backlogged.
Wait, what?
No.
Yes,
200?
exactly 200.
Really?
Yeah. So Rick's going to get it for being closest. But that's pretty darn close here. It's currently Rick with 3 points, Paula with 2. So, yeah, pretty even scoring there.
I figured it would be high with some sequels. I didn't think it'd be 200 high.
It's actually...
I thought I'd overshot, to be honest.
Yeah, it has a 71% rating on How Long to Beat. It looks like it's more of like a 60 game, though. Like, all the ratings are in like the 60, 70, 80. One person has rated it 1. Or like 10. But yeah, it seems like it might be an okay game. Who knows? I will never play it.
I mean, it's overwhelmingly positive on Steam by the looks of it.
Doom and Destiny?
Weird.
Yeah. I mean, they've got a screenshot that's pointing to it on their website.
Well, I mean,
Let's have a
listen,
look.
there's too many games out there, but yeah, tell me, report to us. What's going on with this game?
Doom and Destiny. I've only seen Doom and Destiny Worlds. Where's the original?
Well,
That's
maybe that's
annoying.
the one that's actually doing well. Maybe
Hang
they've
on.
like screen grabbed overwhelmingly positive from like a decade ago.
Well, World says like mostly positive.
That makes sense.
There we are. Original Doom and Destiny. No, to be fair, all reviews overwhelmingly positive. 96% of the 2011 user reviews. Recent reviews are very positive. 100% from 14 in the last 30 days. God, shit, that's very. The more you look at it, the more RPG Maker it is. It looks like a horrible sort of halfway house between RPG Maker and those like nasty mobile ports that Square Enix did before they did the Pixel remasters.
I guess for some, that is an aesthetic that they enjoy, I guess. I mean, maybe if you grew up playing those RPG Maker ones, I suppose that might tickle your fancy or something. I don't know. I just haven't understood it.
Nope.
Personally, to me, it's a little baffling, but whatever. Whatever floats your boat. You know what I'm saying? You do you.
And one nice little bit of news as well. I'm looking at the Hi-Fi, whatever it's called, page on Steam, and it looks like Hi-Fi Rush. Looks like the required specs for that are actually shockingly low. So
that doesn't
maybe I'll
surprise
be
me.
playing that soon too.
It stylistically looks beautiful, but it doesn't like look like it's trying to like push the limits of technology. You know what I mean? Like it's like we just want it to we want it to aesthetically look excellent, but we're not trying to like break anyone's computer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that is it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in to the HowLongToBeat podcast. We'll be back next week.
Peace.